we close to being ready to present? We have about half an hour for 9 groups, so that's a fairly tight schedule. I understand the discussions are still going on. Difficult to stop. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, participants, discussants, active members of civil society, the grassroots. In other words, I hope you all had a chance to come up with ideas. I could feel the conversation going on around, so I understand there was a very active exchange of ideas. Now we have a chance to present them. These will be broadcast on from that little camera, going out to the whole world on a webcast. And I just wanted to say that if there will be a webinar tomorrow, and if any of you want to take part, and I encourage you to take part, then you you can take part in this and continue the conversation with people who have been watching this or who have participated through social media by talking to Johanna, and tomorrow after the lunch you can participate in this webinar. But now we will present these ideas. They will be presented to people in this room. They will be recorded, and they will also go out over the web. And I think Simon managed to sneak out. I was hoping to start with his table. But is Simon the presenter for your table? Yes. So I'll start at the other side. We'll start with this table and go around. Please, if your presenter could come and, oh, Simon's back. Simon, you could start. Yes, we could start. You can give everybody a good, just, no, we have 30 minutes, so about 5 minutes a piece, okay, a little less, yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. And so in our gigantic group, we discussed the issue of labor migration, and we being comparatively good boys and girls, we followed the schedule. And first of all, we listed a great thank you. First of all, we listed the quite many disadvantages which there are in labor migration from the Baltic countries, and there's the classic economic problems for the states, but also I think an important factor which wasn't touched upon in the plenary. There's also the very big human cost for the families of the people who migrate from these countries. Especially, there are quite many children being left behind in quite bad situations, and that is one of those things. We then went on to discuss whether I just have to take my papers. We also stressed there are of course also positive aspects of migration. First of all, the people who migrate actually get a job and very often a better life. One shouldn't forget that. Of course, it might be bad for the Latvian, Lithuanian, or Estonian states that people leave, but the people who go out there not rarely actually winds up in a better social situation than the one that they have at home, and that is also why people do it. And that is, again, maybe not macroeconomically, but for the individual family, a positive result. We then discuss whose responsibility it is, and then of course we think this is a joint responsibility for the European Union countries, both the importers and the exporters of migrant labor, and we agreed that one should try, if possible, to find joint solutions, but then it's also very clear that there are very different views and very different interests from the different countries in this whole conflict, in this whole problem. And we discussed a lot. There were many really horrifying examples of how people are treated in Western Europe, but also how migrants from third countries are treated in the Baltics. With us, it was Lithuanian from Lithuania, and if our colleagues from the Lithuanian labor movement is anybody to go by, I mean, one of the worst things you can do as a migrant from Ukraine is to go to Lithuania, because they are very often treated quite poorly. And again, So, but we agreed that it should be a joint solutions. And what could we then agree as solutions? Well, we didn't get so far in that discussion, and also we maybe didn't agree. The labor part of the movement of our group thought that there should be introduced a minimum European salary. Other parts of the group thought that it would probably be against European legislation and also maybe maybe be very counterproductive for the Baltic countries, because if there is a minimum salary, the Baltic countries would lose a lot of their competition power. But then what we did discuss is there could be stronger common regulation of rules for the workforce, and at least one could maybe just start by enforcing better the rules that already are contained in the social charter. And so I think that was it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I'm just going to go around counterclockwise, so we'll have this table next, please.
Why don't we copyright this format and take it to Brussels? And say to European leaders, you have half an hour, come up with solutions. So that's our first suggestion. Others, we kept going round and round in circles, trying to come up with solutions, and then we arrived at a conclusion that solutions are not possible because there is no quality discussion. And that is the main failure of what we have been observing in the recent months, is the absence of informed quality discussion, reasonable discussion, not polarized, black and white, antagonizing and attaching tags to the other party, but discussion based in European values of free exchange of opinions and discussion that is informed. So our suggestions are mainly to do with arriving at something that resembles a civilized European discussion. So first of all, we think that the issue of migration and refugees and migration was the topic of our table. Needs to change ownership. It is Europeans here sitting around tables discussing Syrians and Afghanis. So people who are directly involved in this process need to be part of that discussion. And it's not just the issue of attaching human face to dehumanized crowd, as Olga Praceska told us about. No, it's not just the human face. It's also people telling about real issues. There is a lack of data, a lack of information on what are the practical things that refugees need. What are the issues that they are dealing with on an everyday basis on their way, and when they arrive, we actually don't know what we are talking about. And that, of course, prevents us from arriving at informed decisions. Another thing that needs to happen is some soul searching by the media, because we, and I say we because I come from the media, have contributed greatly to the polarization of opinions, and I think some soul searching is needed, and their media organizations, professional associations need to be seen as leaders of starting a conversation on how we cover this issue, and that hopefully would lead to more informed and more balanced coverage. Another aspect of this is having discussion between the constituents of members of European Parliament and members of the European Parliament, because MEPs only grace us with their presence when there's a conference and they're invited to speak, but basically we don't see them. We as electorate don't see them on a daily basis, and there is very little interaction. So there is space for civil society to address directly the MEPs that they have elected, and have that issue taken to that level and enter the conversation. And there is only one solution that we thought that could be a common solution for Europe that can be taken, maybe discussed first and then taken at the moment, is something that MEP from Estonia mentioned, that the conditions in refugee camps are very poor and they are very underfunded, and that is something that can be very easily addressed, and some investments put into the existing refugee camps in healthcare, education, and other basic needs that refugees need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I'll go to this table next, please.
Hello, my name is Caroline. I'm from Germany and I'm studying in Latvia at the University of Latvia. My group has discussed the problem with labor migration from the Baltic states to Western Europe, and we came to the conclusion that the biggest problem here why people are leaving is that the people don't earn enough. So companies come here and know there's cheap labor, and so people cannot make a living from the wages, because also rents are rising and it's just hard to live here. And the problem is, well, what we think what could be solutions could be to improve more the labor unions in the Baltic states, because they are so far existent but still weak. So we think they should get more support financially, and also they should make more advertisement to the people that they exist, because many people in the Baltic states don't know that they have labor rights and that they could demand more money, and that they could use labor unions in order to improve their lives. Also, we think that many people, there's also the remigration from Western countries, so that people are coming back to their homelands in the Baltics. And programs have already started. In Estonia, this is a bit more developed, because they have already earlier started these programs to attract people from Western Europe to come back to Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. And we think what could be very attractive for people to come back would be to introduce, for example, maternity leave for 1.5 years for people in the Baltic states, so that they can take care of the children at home. Also, we think that more part-time jobs should be created, so that mothers who have a little baby at home can work part-time, but also take care of their children. And of course, companies also should play a role in this part and raise the wages. They make profit, but the workers usually don't feel this in their wage level, and this is a pity. So yeah, we also think that there should be more cooperation among the Baltic states, among each other, because we right now think that the Baltic states are more competing with each other, Latvia against Estonia, or Lithuania against Estonia, or Latvia against Lithuania, instead of cooperating. One of my colleagues said that each country has several universities, and maybe it's better to have one big university and to combine all the people, so instead of making more competition in the countries themselves. And we also think that there should be more cooperation with the Nordic countries and the Baltic states, and also with southern countries of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Next table over there, please.
Group 4 on labor migration. We had a long discussion, and I'm sure that if we had some more time, we would solve most of the problems. But we started out by discussing whether labor migration was a negative thing or a positive thing, and found out that, yes, there are many positive things, but basically it's a catastrophe. There are positive things in the sense that to many people it's an experience, to many families it's a question of surviving or getting funds enough to have children of the family going to school, etc. But we were in doubt whether it was a net profit. Actually, we felt that the most important thing of it all was the brain drain. The brain drain, which means that the Baltic countries, if development continues the way it is, will become more and more like a remote area of a country with less and less facilities and possibilities. So basically, we find it's a catastrophe. It's basically, but there is a great interest in the situation going on, because on the one hand, you have the old European countries, EU countries, let's say that, who are now talking about setting up a minimum salary of some kind, and the new EU countries protesting. So there is an interest in having the situation going on. But on the other hand, we feel it's a catastrophe. As to sharing responsibility to find a solution, yes, the solution will have many different aspects. We were talking about basically very much about better information, which corresponds to what was said earlier about unions having a bigger role, etc. One way would be to have labor inspectors, as I understand they are trying out in Estonia, while who would check what kind of labor came in, but this is not exactly the same as labor going out. In Denmark, for example, we have unions who have now sort of got access to workplaces, so that unions feel that there's a much better balance than there was before between the workers from other countries and workers from Denmark. There's less tension than there was before. All this is very much a question of being informed and also of being organized, and the unions have to play a role. As to the solution, now, what could a common EU response be, and what could national responses be? EU response. The proposal from our table was to say we need more structural funds. The structural funds is a way of social support to areas which have that need. So structural funds are not only have many different kinds. They're not all tied to regions. They can also be tied to social development and labor training, etc., etc. And there are also cohesion funds. So structural funds could be one way. We cannot see that, for example, if you send many Latvians to Germany, that Germany should send so and so much money per head back to Latvia. It must be a European response, and the structural funds was a form we know and which could be used here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, that table there. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Adewale. I'm representing Group 6. Concerning the task that we're assigned with, we actually came out with understanding that historical backgrounds and historical oppression of the Russian concerning the Baltic states was a major factor when it comes to the Baltic people actually opening up their border to the refugee people, to the people seeking refugee in their countries. The political games and playing on the fear of non-Christians and saying that all terrorists are Muslims and all refugees are terrorists is actually playing a bigger role in the accommodation of these people in the countries where they're actually seeking asylum. Now, going further, when we talk about the cultural integration, actually in our group, we actually came to an understanding that one thing about cultural integration is this: when you have people from other background, people from other culture, it is also so much interesting knowing fully well that a little idea from here, a little idea from there, birth a new innovation. And one of the major fears of the people of the Baltic is the fact that they've lived in oppression for a longer period of time, and they are actually scared of losing their national identity, knowing fully well or thinking fully well that when they have a new set of people, a new set of generation in their environment, in their culture, among them, then history is about to repeat itself, which is actually a bigger fear factor among the people. Now, talking about the language and likewise the cultural diversity. For Estonia as an example, where I actually live, one of the major fears in Estonia is the fact that the people fear that their language is actually going gradually into extinction. Then having a new set of people that speaks a different language, a different mindset, a different philosophy, a different culture background from what they actually grew up with is actually endangering their own national identity. And talking about the media, we were in our group, we actually came to a conclusion that the media has actually oriented the people on seeing the negative side of these asylum-seeking people. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for us to push it further, that the media has to reorientate these people, knowing fully well that not all asylum seekers are actually going to be endangering their society. And a close community and non-exposure to other culture and values of other nationality is also a bigger issue at hand. Because due to the historical background of the Baltic states, many of these people actually don't have the exposure, they don't have the international relationship concerning other people's culture, and likewise the identity. So right now, with that background, it's also a bigger problem for them to open up their border, open up their gates to a people who they think basically share different ideas. Now, talking about the education level, so one of my group mates actually brought up the idea that aside the fact that the civil education of the people in schools should be raised up, it also has to go alongside with the political office holders, because many of these people, they're actually playing on the fear of their citizen by selling fear to the people and using this as a campaigning strategy that the European Union is trying to steal their identity. Now, talking about should the European Union have a single solution to this problem? The answer is no. Every country has their own peculiar problem, and every country needs to come up with their own peculiar solution. Going out there with a single solution for a diverse problem is not going to be the solution to the issue at hand. How can one ensure a common solution reflection, democratic will of the European people? A group mate of mine says something which I'm going to be handing on that note. She said that the European Union was not created on fear. Neither is the European Union created on hostility. Rather, the European Union was created based on hospitality and embracing diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next table there, and then we'll go around like that. So, yeah. Yes, in the corner.
First of all, we thought because we're a group 10, we can say we agreed to all the speakers who were here before. And talking about our subject was more refugees than labor. But talking about the labor, this is one of the weirdest dilemmas we have. Somehow we all here, at least in Latvian media space, we talk about that refugees will come and take our jobs. At the same time, there's another story that, of course, all they want is not to work and get support, social support. So we don't know what is really going on. Luckily, at our table, we also had Estonians and Latvians and people from Germany. The idea, I think what differs from what we are called old Europe, is that Baltic states always think about themselves as victims. And this story of victimhood is very hard to perceive, that you can also, you have ability and you have resources also to give. And I think that's what scare people, that is the story about them coming and taking and wanting something that we don't want to give, or they're going to destroy our language. They will come and they'll bring different religions. So, of course, good news are that there have always been, for the last at least 20 years, Muslims in Riga and in Latvia, and actually, people actually, they know their neighbors who are of different nationalities and different religions. So I also think that grassroots movements are very important, especially in this age of social media. As an amazing example, I want to mention Egils Grasmanis from I Want to Help Refugees, Gribu palīdzēt bēgļiem, that got people involved to offer language, Latvian language courses to refugees, to get money, support children's clothes for refugees, because as you know, many refugees that come are children, and these families have nothing. So, and that also somehow show us suddenly in a better light. It's not that, if you read only our media, I don't know, like, it seems that we are all xenophobic, paranoid, small nation, but we are not, and we actually are pretty generous. So, about the values that unite, this wonderful question that kind of supposedly you answered no. All 28 countries need to, what's the answer? Like, because they need one size fits all. There is that one size, and that is human life. So that should be not forgotten, and that should be repeated again, that those people that are running away from war, as Mr. Zila started to say, who is Syrian and who is not, and what is the boat scheme, how these people get in. It's like as if he's also criticizing the ways how these people try to escape the war and death and destruction. So I think that is the wrong narrative. So that's why I do agree that we do need a high quality discussion. And so I don't think the society in general will be, if they are better informed, and if they do meet people of other religions, colors, and cultures, I think people will be open and will be less fearful that we're going to lose Latvian language and suddenly our national costumes will disappear in one day. Because Latvia, as in Baltic states, we're not open-air museum. We are live, living, vital society. And even though we do need more young people, but I think we know that our school system can get more people of different cultures and just learn from it. So, and also the one thing we thought that also, I don't know, the refugees, the people of color, students from Erasmus, when they are sometimes treated wrong, they hear all these bad sometimes things, you know, that people say about their culture or how they look like. I think they have to fight back, not physically, but just to say, hello, you know, why? Why you're doing it to me, or do you want to hear something about me? They have these wonderful Bosnian Muslim students that organize discussion groups, and they do tell about their religion, about their culture, just to show other students they are not to fight the stereotypes one-on-one discussion, you know. So, yeah, So I'll let other groups to talk to with their solutions. But just remember, when people from Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania moved to England or to Germany, what the old Europe was saying is the same. They are coming with their horrible surnames, with their pickles, and their violence, and they're probably all drinking. And now it's been 15 years, and the attitudes are changing, and they are much more open. So I think that hopefully it will happen also with other refugees in Europe too.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to this table next.
Well, okay. Well, there were a couple of questions. We focused mainly on one, refugees and the Baltic states. And we agreed that basically there is definitely a lack of experience, which is also kind of driving the political discourse in those countries. And that we think that actually this is one of the core issues that should be addressed. And it's basically this negative discourse that coping with the refugee crisis, which is kind of, what do I say, key terms which closer to microphone, okay, which are basically, about stereotype, prejudices, and xenophobia. And we think that this should change, and this could change actually by engaging new and more stakeholders within the country. And as the previous speaker mentioned, there may be also a grassroots level. And yeah, this is definitely something important. And looking also how other EU countries dealt with the problem. I mean, we agree that there is issues that remain, in particular at various levels: societal level, economic level, and governance level. I mean, there is less experience than in other countries of the European Union on how to tackle the issue and those processes connected to asylum seekers. Going forward, we think that actually addressing the insights and best practices of other EU countries could be a first step. But nevertheless, one issue remains, and this is the limited jobs and positions available in the Baltic states. And I personally think that we cannot properly address this issue without also addressing the economic environment. And maybe one should also think about how could the asylum, solutions for the refugee crisis be also coordinated with economic measures. That's basically what we're discussing.
Go there.
Hi, I'm Anu, and I'm representing the ideas and discussion from Group 8. I must admit, we didn't go by the schedule, so we started from questions like, why are the most refugees men? We found some ideas for it. For example, a lot of times the men leave their families, their women and children, in the refugee camps, and they go to find a place to live. So, and also, often they are running away from the fighting. They don't want to be part of the war. And also that young men are maybe a bit more opportunistic, so they have more chances. But I think the main issue is to leave the families in the safety of the refugee camp and go and find a place for them. The other question that we were thinking about is, why don't the refugees go to Arabic countries? The reality is actually that they do. If we look at the biggest refugees, the biggest acceptors of refugees, we see that there are Turkey, Pakistan, and Lebanon. So we thought of how they would be maybe easier to go there because the Arabic languages. But even though we see that everybody are coming to Europe, it's not the reality. They are going actually to Turkey and Pakistan and Lebanon. When we got back to the plan and the schedule, we discussed about the challenges for the Baltics. And we thought mainly maybe the idea that the refugees are well, hoping to go to Germany, and they don't want to come here actually. So they are afraid of the unknown, and they are hoping for the higher salaries and the better life conditions. But also that the local people here are not so accepting are not so willing to accept them. For example, in Poland, they were taking Christian families from Syria because they were more familiar with Christians. But in the end, even the Christian families from Syria wanted to go to Germany. So these were the ideas that we discussed. There are a lot of questions, but we didn't got that far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, this table, please. And there's been a request from people on the internet if you could introduce yourself. I'm sorry, this is the last table, but if you...
Hello, my name is Alexander Aidarov. I'm from Estonia. And as already announced, I represent ideas from our group, number 7. So what about are these challenges that Baltic states are facing up with nowadays? Are these economic, cultural, political, or something else? Of course, cultural, as already mentioned, that Estonians are afraid of losing their identity and language and so on. While 25 years of independence and Russians living in Estonia and Russian speakers, by far no problems. Estonians speak Estonian. Thanks to policies and so on. So why should we bother with refugees who live in Estonia? And it's a matter of good language trainings and so on and so on. Economic, as nicely explained by Professor Kazan, I think that the irony is that Baltic states work on how to push out good people from the country, and then without changing say, working environment and so on. And then we get people outside, and without changing this environment, like work opportunities and so on. And if we think about what might help, then it's not only about refugees, it's about our own populations, about our own nations, to create better work opportunities, better human rights developments, and so on and so on. Political, of course, is related to cultural issue that we are afraid of losing our identity and so on. But another issue is related to the quality of government. It's about good services. If we have a lot of different language trainings and so on, then the issue is that they are so different, and they are of different qualities, so that it's not a matter that someone, say, Russian speaker, doesn't want to speak Estonian or Latvian or Lithuanian. Because maybe some teacher is not that well trained and so on. It's a matter of services, and I think that is another important key that should be taken into account. And as I think that Maria, I don't recall the surname, she nicely explained these issues. You may recall from your notes or from handouts. Then one size fits all. No, it doesn't fit, because Baltic states, regardless of the fact that we have a lot of different minorities already living, we don't have a system that deals with refugees. And this is different cultural group, which is not similar to Russian speakers and so on. And it seems to me another challenge is related that we very often stress that we offer individual approach. We treat every person according to certain high standards of his own or her demands and so on. In case of refugees, we'll have certain communities with same problems and same issues. And it's time to reconsider individual approach, which was very popular, say, 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Now we have to reconsider certain practices. It's also important concerning this one-size-fits-all about communication and dehumanization of refugees, because we know it's very easy from the great presentation that it's easy to dehumanize this part of the population, and we believe that these people are aggressive, these people are Muslims, and this means that they are dangerous. I think that famous one American sociologist said that reality is not that physically exists. If you think that God is real or Satan is real, it is reality, no matter it's somewhere it doesn't exist. If we believe that Muslims are aggressive, we behave according to our own belief. And this is our reality. So it's a matter of communication with population to explain to people at many different levels, starting from kindergarten, upper secondary school, and so on, that yes, you may have certain problems with certain issues. However, at the same time, many people are not bad people, not evil people, and very often people became crazy just because of conditions, because of an environment they are put in. And is it possible to find common solution, and does it reflect democratic will of European people? As Mr. Pyatt said, that we have a lot of populists and we have a lot of bad people screaming that they are coming and so on. And we have so many good people who are shy. And I think that this internet solution today, Manabals is one of the options. How can we foster or promote good people's voice in society nowadays? Thank you.
Thank you all to all the presenters. When we were discussing with Simon and Johanna this panel, we thought that by the end everybody would say, oh, all the ideas have already been said, I don't have to say anything. But it seems that at each table you came up with a lot of very different and original ideas, and that's great. The conference continues tomorrow at 9:30 downstairs here. So we will continue to have this discussion, continue to debate these points. Right now, there will be buses leaving for the restaurant. You can take your coats and go out the front entrance, and then people will guide you to the buses. And again, I remind our Estonian friends that you have a chance to quickly go to the hotel and register and come back here. Yeah, quickly. And that's all. See you tomorrow.